Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. African coal-to-power projects are gaining traction, with underground coal-to-gas thought leader Julian Mast-Ingle saying coal mining in Africa, and in South Africa in particular, could provide the key to powering up growth on the continent. Martin Creamer joins me in studio to expand on the latest developments. Hi Martin.
Hi Tracy.
Why have the Mabasekwa and Mbeya coal-to-power projects been in the headlines of late?
It seems that Africa is quite keen on coal to power, as we've always experienced in South Africa. You know, the lights are on courtesy of coal to power. And there have been pronouncements lately by the African Union saying that Africa is just going to have to make use of its coal because this is the cheapest way to get electricity. And although in the developed world, you know, coal is being frowned upon, the AU is making the point, look, beggars can't be choosers. You know, we've got to use this coal. And we see that South Africa is also, through the Department of Energy, called for capacity from private coal-to-power producers. We call them independent power producers. And there are tenders out at the moment, which has created a bit of excitement. And so when we talk about the Mabasekwa, that's Botswana. Botswana is keen on doing cross-border supplies. So they've got a huge volume of coal. They want to add value to it because the cost of logistics, the cost of transporting that raw coal is just prohibitive in their calculations. You know, they were thinking of taking it via Richards Bay, and also they're thinking of doing it via Namibia. But when you start adding up what that's going to cost and the price that you get for coal, raw coal at the moment, it's seen as non-viable. But the feeling is that if you can add value to that coal by turning it into electricity, the logistics are far cheaper because you send that electricity along an infrastructure which is already largely developed. It's a power infrastructure, grids that can be linked up. And they see opportunities in South Africa mainly, particularly as a result of the Department of Energy in South Africa inviting bidders to come forward for more than 3,000 megawatts of coal-fired power. But they're also looking across, you know, at Zambia, and they're seeing that Zambia's reliance on hydropower has been excessive. And when there's a drought, the impact is huge. Now they are suffering the effect of a drought at the moment, and the entire economy, you know, gets set back badly, particularly their mining economy, which wasn't quite prepared for this. So they're seeing that they could be a hub that could supply energy into southern Africa, and that it could be largely coal to power. And then if you go to the Mbeya one that you mentioned, that's in Tanzania. You've got a company listed on the London ASX, keen to actually get its project, which is calling the Mbeya project, going. It's at quite an advanced stage of feasibility, so that it can also do a coal-to-power exercise, which is common to us, as we say, in South Africa here, with so much of going on, but in many parts of the world, it's not going as fast as it should. But the African Union saying, no, let's go with this, because the coal is there, and this is the cheapest route, and they are developing in the background ways of doing this cleanly, and they're advancing, you know, every day. So by the time we get to do it, we probably won't be putting all that carbon dioxide in the air that is happening now because of the technological progress.
And you've made mention that Shumba's Mabasekwa project is of particular importance to South Africa. Why so?
Because they want to export. You know, you've got an economy like Botswana, as keen as mustard to find exports other than diamonds, because their reliance on diamonds is huge. And you know, when you look at the value of those diamonds, it's such a wonderful sweet spot that they're in. But they see themselves not advancing, you know, out of the capacity, the current capacity, which has been reduced to, I think, to about 23 million carats. They don't see themselves moving beyond that. They don't see scope to grow that. You know, the demand for diamonds is picking up again, but in the midstream of the diamond supply chain, there's been a lot of choking off. and banks which used to fund that midstream. And when I talk about midstream, that's cutting and polishing. That used to be funded by banks which were really keen on that industry. Some of them have gone into liquidation. The funding of that midstream is not as quick as it used to be, and the banks are not as keen as they were. And so the price of polished diamonds has tended to decline, even though the price of rough has been going up. And that has squeezed the whole market. It's created bottlenecks. And so that is a big concern to Botswana, because they're so reliant on diamonds for their income. And in one particular diamond mine as well, it goes down to really a big source of their revenue coming from one mine. So they're very, very keen to spread that export revenue stream, and they see this as one avenue where you can take the coal. They've got 200 billion tons of known reserves, get it out of the ground, and instead of exporting it as rough state and its raw state, burn it and create the electricity that is now in demand with the tenders coming through from South Africa, go over the fence in virtually an existing infrastructure and look elsewhere in Africa into that big power pool. And that could be a source of new revenue and a diversification away from diamonds, which they're finding difficult to do.
And why is Julian Mast-Ingle so passionate about underground coal gasification?
Well, I think that he's seeing it as a step that is favorable from an environmental point of view, because you no longer have to put people underground. You no longer have that risk of death. You're sitting in a situation where if you didn't use underground coal gasification, you wouldn't be able to use that coal at all because it's at great depth. So in situations where coal is unlockable, you can actually create a gasification. You can create a gas stream from that coal through igniting the coal from surface, and then using the gas that comes through that, bringing it to surface, and that becomes the energy, the fuel for a power station, but it can also be the fuel for petrol and diesel and chemicals. So you've got that Sasol idea coming back in, where when Sasol digs out that coal, in Secunda and in Sasolburg, it still processes it. It still burns it, so it creates that gas that is needed in the Sasol process, and it becomes valuable petrol with low sulfur, and it becomes valuable diesel and valuable chemicals. So that's another possibility. That's why people are so keen on the underground coal gasification, which I note Julian Mast-Ingle likes to refer to as underground coal to gas. I think it's an even better way of describing it, coal to gas. We see a lot of keenness around this coal to gas, and he's saying you've got coal under there which is really sterilized. You won't be able to get any value out of it. Use this process, and there you've got an option of either generating electricity or creating transport fuels, or doing both and getting the added benefit of chemicals. And again, he sees this as a big advantage for Africa. And he's listening again to the African Union, which made it clear that they want to make use of the coal in the ground, even if it can be turned to gas, that's great. And they're talking about methane possibilities, and also this underground coal gasification.
And what underground coal gasification projects do we have in South Africa?
Well, it goes back a long way now. People have been talking about underground coal gasification, but not being too much about it, not really advancing it as fast as possibly they could. And Eskom, was an early mover. Goes back to 2007, where you can see that particular coal to gas plant that they've got is still operating in Majuba, at Majuba Power Station. And you have other private sector people scouring around, in the Free State, the area of Turnison, where the coal is very deep, probably is not economically possible to mine that using existing mining technology. They are looking to underground coal gasification, where they feel that could be turned to positive account. They're also looking at not only electricity, but also the other possibilities for this gas that you can get by burning the coal. And in many parts of the world, Asia is looking at the same thing. There was just one part of the world which seems to have turned its back on it and will ban it by year end, and that's the state of Queensland in Australia. That particular premier has turned his back on this, and I don't know exactly what the reason is, but it seems as though the particular area where you would have got this possibility to turn the coal into gas is being used for alternative pursuits. And if you bring in that coal to gas and the gasification, it could disturb something that is also bringing in revenue. That's what it seems to me. But the details haven't been spelt out. But Queensland has been given the assurance that before year end, underground coal gasification, or UCG, will be outlawed. So that's an interesting aspect to it. But, we noted when certain states in Australia outlawed the mining of uranium, and that led to Paladin coming to Africa because they couldn't do anything in Australia. So they saw possibilities in Botswana and Malawi. And I'm sure people who can't do anything in Australia or in Queensland, they will see possibilities to do things in Africa and Asia. But that's the way it's moving at the moment. And we've also got the Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed Exoro that has been looking very carefully at the possibilities of UCG, or underground coal gasification. So perhaps its time is coming. The time hasn't quite come, but it looks like the time is coming, particularly in Africa.
Thanks, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Tracy.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news analysis on the mining industry.